Today's reading is from Rays of the One Light, weekly commentary on the Bible and Bhagavad Gita by J. Donald Walters. This week's reading is Living in the Presence of God. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. Following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. In the Gospel of St. Matthew, chapter 25, we read of a king, capitalized, for the reference is to God, who welcomes certain devotees to the divine consciousness, saying, I was an hungered, and ye gave me meat. I was thirsty, and ye gave me drink. I was a stranger, and ye took me in. Naked, and ye clothed me. I was sick, and ye visited me. I was in prison, and ye came unto me. The elect asked him when it was that they had served him in these ways. And the king answered, Verily I say unto you, insomuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, ye have done it unto me. To see God as residing in every human being, as indeed he does, is to open oneself to limitless opportunities for serving him. Paramahansa Yogananda, in the autobiography of a yogi, described a saint who lived in this consciousness as the greatest man of humility I ever knew. He described a seemingly chance encounter with this saint. Another day found me walking alone near the Howrah railroad station. I stood for a moment by a temple, silently criticizing a small group of men with drum and cymbals who were violently reciting a chant. How undevotionally they use the Lord's divine name in mechanical repetition, I reflected. My gaze was astonished by the rapid approach of Master Mahashaya. Sir, how come you here? The saint, ignoring my question, answered my thought. Isn't it true, little sir, that the beloved's name sounds sweet from all lips, ignorant and wise? He passed his arm around me affectionately. I found myself carried on his magic carpet to the merciful presence. If you would see God, watch for him everywhere. If you would hear his voice, listen for it in all sounds and also in their supporting silences. If you would know God, seek his wisdom behind merely human knowledge. The Bhagavad Gita in the 6th chapter states, One who beholds my presence everywhere and in all things dwelling equally in me, he never lose loving sight of me, nor I of him, through all eternity. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Oh, oh, oh.
Good morning, everyone. As I was thinking about this topic, living in the presence of God, it's pretty special going into the Christmas and holy season. And if you read the weekly email invitation, I promised you today I was going to talk about spiritual archaeologists and spiritual astronauts. So I'll leave it to you to see how it fits together. But starting with the archaeologist, Swami Kriyananda, Ananda's founder and Yogananda's direct disciple, went on a pilgrimage to the Holy Land many years ago. And he described there, like an archaeologist, having to sort of peel back the layers of time and what he was observing in the material world outside of him, in the places where Christ had lived and taught, and feeling just beneath the surface of that the powerful vibration of Christ consciousness, and tuning into that, and it had a different flavor in different locations, and based on that he wrote this beautiful oratorio of music where he was tuning into that Christ consciousness as it expressed itself in those different places. Well, this is what we want to try to do, is look behind the form, the material form of things, to the spirit in ourselves and in everything and everyone around us. He described also, Kriyananda, how when he was sitting at his own father's deathbed, that he'd had a difficult relationship with his father most of his life. His father was a geologist and an engineer, and temperamentally he looked at life in terms of how it works. And Swami Kriyananda tended to be more philosophical temperamentally, and he asked the questions, why? Why are we here? Why is this universe? Where is God? Those kinds of questions. And so, as a young man and an adult, he disappointed his father, taking off at age 22 in the 1940s to live with an Indian guru in Los Angeles and be a monk. This was just totally the antithesis of everything that was happening in America at the time. And certainly how the father viewed the life of his eldest son should go. And so, they had a lot of, tension between them. But he said that there he was sitting next to his father, and clearly the body was very decrepit and just about to give up the ghost, as it were. And what he could feel when he closed his eyes and meditated and prayed for his father's soul was his soul, his spirit. And he said it was a noble spirit and a beautiful spirit. And he realized how these outer forms and these personalities that we go through on the stage of life, acting out all these different parts, that's not who we really are. And the essence of the soul of his father was uplifting and beautiful to him. Well, it's there for us all to try to tune into. When we went to Assisi many years ago, where we have a retreat center, Ananda does, we took our children, they were 11 and 9 at the time, with us. And at one point we went to the places of St. Francis. And I think it was in St. Catherine's church, where her body is uncorrupt and lays in state. Our son was just in that, he was the 11-year-old, and he was in that stage of life where everything was just fascinating to him. And he ran ahead and he came back, he said, you gotta come here, you gotta come here. He said, God's presence is so strong here, you can cut it with a knife. This is my 11-year-old, non-spiritually interested now, little. But when he was a little guy, he could cut it with a knife. And that's what spirit is. It's very, very tangible if we just tune into it. I know at my own mother's passing, I was present when she left her body. And I remember, with death and with birth, it's like a window onto spirit that happens in that moment. I remember in that moment when she took her last breath, there was this absolute profound stillness. it, it, it was a thundering stillness. It was so powerful. And the same thing has happened every time I've been present at a birth. In that moment, there is this, the breath just gets sucked out of you, and there is just this absolute stillness of mind and of heart. And these are moments that all of us experience at one time or another, at one point or another. And they're there to sort of lure us along to what can be when we tune into that spirit and live in that spirit. I know when we visited Yogananda's bedroom and sitting room at the ashram in Los Angeles, we have gone there many times on pilgrimage. And when you step into that room, there is a thundering silence. It's just absolute stillness. And boy, I wish I could meditate there all the time, you know. And in Swami Kriyananda's meditation area at his home at the Crystal Hermitage in Ananda Village, California, when you walk into what used to be his personal meditation space, they have a little glass area now, sort of sectioning it off. And on the other side of the glass, there's a little area where you can sit and meditate and tune into it. And I had that exact same feeling when I walked in there. It was, you know, you're just in real meditation, in absolute stillness. And when we first start practicing meditation, especially, God gives us these little treats, these little moments of absolute stillness when we're tuned in completely to spirit. It's sort of like little gifts we get to go, okay, keep going. You know, here's just a little taste of it. Everyone has this at one point or another in their efforts. And what we want to try to do is marry all those moments together, you know, and have them stretch and become longer and longer, because that's when we see the reality, the real truth. That's when we experience truth, because our own minds are completely still and our own hearts are completely still. And that's what, of course, the practice of meditation is designed to do. Last week, when people shared a little bit about how they found the autobiography of a yogi, and Zach mentioned that he didn't know he was looking for God, but he was looking for what is real. He knew this world he was seeing is not real, and he wanted to experience something real. Well, some people call it real, some people call it truth, some people call it spirit, some people call it God, but it's all the same experience. And that's the one we're seeking for. That's where we have to be the archaeologist, digging and digging past the form. And then there's the astronaut. So the astronaut, it's interesting that John Glenn passed away this week too, and maybe that's where the inspiration of that word came to for me. But in fact, I saw a movie called The Other Side of the Moon, I think it was called, where they interviewed all these different astronauts who had the experience of being in outer space or even on the moon. And all of them were transformed within, spiritually, even if they were atheistic and just perceived themselves as material scientists. They all had a transformative experience. When you pull way back with detachment, you get perspective, you get that bird's eye view of that little ball of mud that we're all walking around on. The perspective, everything changes. And the other day somebody asked me, how could it be that suddenly this weird thing is upon us that happened with the shock of the election? And, how could that be? It seemed so sudden, they said. And I said, it took us 2,400 years to get there. 2,400 years prior were Kali Yuga, the depths of material reality, materialism, institutions, fixed, rigidity. 2,400 years is long enough to just thicken that concrete of viewing the world through the material perspective. And now we're in the age of Dwapara, as Yogananda explains, and many other world traditions have this understanding as well, the age of energy. So we understand that this matter is not what it appears to be. It's all energy. And so we're moving into that world. We're moving into it really quickly. The technological discoveries and movements forward. I saw this one special on what's his name? Stephen Jobs. And he was just saying he just felt like they were at the edge of this incredible, vast universe of new discoveries. And it was just like a kid in the candy store to just experiment with all these different things that brought us to the internet, wireless, all the things we're experiencing now, which probably 15 years from now will seem antiquated. It's moving that quickly. And so with that movement, we're in an ascendant age. And with that movement of the understanding of energy, we're in the industrial age, when everything changed, people were trying to hang on for dear life to the old ways. But it had to change. You have to go with the times. You have to adapt. We have to be flexible. And so in this time too, we're at the beginning of this age of energy, and people are hanging on for dear life. In fact, it's taking sort of the ultimate materialist probably to sort of shake it all up and shift it all around, because it's not Republican and it's not Democrat. It's just an ascendant age and a changing time, and people struggle with change. But God never changes. And so that's where we want to be. Yogananda said that there would be a United States of America and a United States of Europe and a United States of Asia and Africa and so forth. The world is getting smaller through globalization, and people will cooperate with one another. And this sort of last-ditch, no, I don't want to, cooperate. And I want to remain the wealthiest country in the world and have everybody else live in poverty. It just can't happen, because we can see the poverty now. And most people of goodwill know that it needs to be shared, and it needs to be brought into some sense of balance, as we need to find in ourselves. So we want to be that archaeologist that looks for the spirit in everything, and we want to be that astronaut that keeps that greater perspective, so that we don't get caught up in the seeming confusion and drama of it all. See the big picture, know where we're going, keep our eye on the ball, and keep moving creatively in that direction. So living in the presence of God is being in this world, but not of it, as the saying goes. Well, how do we be in this world and not of it? it's a sort of a both and situation. I was inspired many years ago when I read the life of the Christian mystic Brother Lawrence. And he was a very simple, humble monk who served in the kitchen of his monastery, but he had a profound practice of the presence of God. And he said to him it made no difference whether he was in prayer or he was in the activity of the kitchen with several people shouting at the same time and all the chaos and cacophony that could take place there. He felt God's presence and calmness within him as strongly as he did on his knees in prayer. And that's the place that we want to get to. And there's many, many aspects of the teachings that help us to get to that place, to be in this world, but not of it, to be the archaeologist, and, get that double degree of being an archaeologist and being an astronaut at the same time. And so, Christmas is especially this entire holy season. For us, it goes all the way through Yogananda's birthday, just 10 days or so after Christmas. These two great avatars were born in roughly the same time frame. I'm sure it's not an accident. For us to, this is another window onto spirit, this season, to try to tune into it and to that divine presence that's just behind the form of everything. Yogananda gave us the Christmas all-day meditation, which we'll have next Saturday. And that's a powerful tool, not only to bring that stillness into everything we do in this season, which, in many ways has gone over the top with materialism, but just beneath the surface of it. And when you sit still in that all-day meditation, you feel it. You tune into that Christ consciousness, that universal Christ, Krishna. Same word, different traditions, same meaning, the anointed one. To tune into that presence, the anointed one meaning the avatar, one who was born this time in that incarnation, completely free. When we tune into that magnetism, it's like walking into Yogananda's room or Kriyananda's meditation room. It is there for the taking, for us to tune into. And so I know we can't all sit there, none of us that I'm aware of can sit there and be in true meditation for 8 hours. True meditation means breathlessness. I'm not familiar with anyone yet who's experiencing that for 8 hours straight. But when we're meditating, we're trying, and we're putting our energy out in that direction. And in that effort, great blessings come. So I hope to see you all there.
So let's listen to these words from Whispers from Eternity. O Divine Father, Thou art just behind my prayer. Why dost Thou seem so far away? Thou dost tremble in my feelings. Thy presence glimmers through the veil of my thoughts. Yet dost Thou seem so far away? Father, come, remove Thy veil. Come, Father, come. Hear the voice of my prayer. I want to know Thee, to talk to Thee, to hear Thee speak to me. I want to pray to Thee and know that Thou hear my prayer. Show me the way that leads to Thee. I'd like to